G'day, I'm Munro Hardy. I originally grew up in the bush in Victoria on a sheep property down there. Loved working hard, working with Dad in the yards and mustering sheep. And it was something that I was always interested in doing myself, and absolutely fell in love with it, just how remote this country can be and how rugged it is. As a young fella, you hear about these stories and how wild it can be up here. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted a good time, a fun time, and it's exactly what I got.
When I came up, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. But I think once I was up here, that theme of working hard and playing hard definitely shone through. There's not many alternatives when it comes to looking for a place to go to socialise and to be with other people. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a sense of pressure to drink. The part I found challenging about that was that when I usually crumbled to the peer pressure, that there was that feeling of acceptance at the other end of it. That probably led me down a path at times.
Drinking's been a huge part of the culture up here. It seems to just be a part of life. Every story you hear about is something to do with that. It's at the rodeo and you go and get on the rum and people, they drink hard and play hard, but work hard. You're part of a tight-knit group on the station, so you've all got to have quite a good relationship, I think, and you've got to manage that within the team. They might have been out in camp in the paddock in their swags for the last 2 weeks, mustering cattle and processing cattle through the yards. You're working with each other every day, so from sunrise to sunset you're working together with the same team, and then you're eating together in the camp, and you're socialising after work. I've seen the troubles in the bush with relationships with alcohol. It can be pretty bad, especially with young people coming up and developing those negative habits, I think. You have a hard day and the first thing you want to do is go and crack a beer to deal with it and knock off and, I'm going to have a beer and forget about the day. And I think in the bush that's what we do. A lot of people do the same thing. It never occurred to me to question or to reflect on our drinking culture back then. It's just the way it was. It's how it is. You almost feel rude if you're not doing that, if you don't join in.
I wouldn't say that I ever had a problem, but it's so socially acceptable that you have a drink at the end of a tough day. It became pretty clear that I wasn't being as effective as I could be. I probably wasn't getting the sleep that I needed because I was staying up and having a few beers, which meant that I couldn't communicate well with my team the next day, or that I just wasn't fit enough to run around the yards.
You want to hook in, get the job done, and then play up when you can, you have your good times with your mates. But as you grow into those leadership positions, and for me particularly realising that this is where I wanted to be for my working career, that's when I started to sort of look at the culture and how we were behaving on stations and in stock camps.
The catalyst moment came from guidance of my managers who I was working for. They basically told me in black and white that they could see that I had a future in ag and in Northern Australia, but that I was going to piss it up against a wall if I didn't take a pretty good hard look at what I was doing and my actions and my behaviours. So I think when I'd identified that relationship with alcohol was actually affecting more people than myself, it probably hurt me because I felt like I'd failed as a leader. And I think more than that, I'd failed as a friend. It was an industry leader at a conference who actually introduced me to Channel 1. I remember listening to Shan's story, and I think because I'd made that decision not long earlier to cut back in my own drinking, when I was listening to Shan, it was like light bulb after light bulb was going off, and I could see that I was very close to going down quite a slippery slope. It made it pretty easy for me to look at cutting back in my drinking. That was when I think learned how significant the message of okay to say no is. When I first made the decision to cut back, the biggest challenge was getting out of my own head and thinking about what other people would think. And yeah, there were a few people who made a couple of little remarks there early on, but quickly came around and were supportive of that change. In terms of change, it went from looking for that beer at the end of a day's work to now being just as satisfied with a glass of cold water. But that being said, I still love a beer.
it was never a huge problem for me, but it was just something that I wanted to cut back on. You know, you hear stories of people cutting back for a month or 3 months and how good it is, how good they feel. And it was just that every now and then just chipping away, hearing those stories, and that made me question my habits and what we were doing, and just thought to cut back. You know, after years of just having a beer or two at the end of the day, I looked at my own performance and thought, right, well, I'm always a bit doughy in the morning and I want to get up feeling fresh. I want to feel like that. I want to be on top of my game all the time. When you're running a camp or a station, you're the first up, you know, you've got to get organised for the team. So I decided to cut back initially and just cut my grog out through the weekdays, for example. And then, like everyone else, it became a New Year's resolution to let's get off the grog for good. Let's do a full month or 3 months. And I did. I got through that first 2-month period and felt incredible. Never felt so good in my life. And then, of course, the social events come around again. And now, you know, I've been on and off the beers for, you know, a few events over the last couple of months. And to trial that has been hugely beneficial. You know, you're just on your game so much more. And that's why now I'm going to continue it.
Alcohol is playing such a huge role in the degradation of so many people in rural Australia. I think the troubling thing is that it's easy. In the short term, for a lot of people, it works. But what concerns me and what I think is affecting a lot of people is that short-term fix sets up a very long-term struggle. The reality is up here, I think, is that alcohol is a big problem for a lot of people, and our relationship with alcohol in rural Australia is so problematic because we don't see it happening. I think because we choose to not be aware of the effect it's having. The message isn't to say, you know, don't drink, but it's about supporting those who choose not to drink or choosing to cut back like I did. So I think the fact that it relates to everyone is what really attracted me to it. That's a message that I certainly want to start sharing, and I think that should be endorsed by a lot more people in the north.
I think the okay to say no messaging really resonates with me because it's supporting your mates. It's not about you have to be off the beers. It's just if you want to have a beer, that's okay, but if your mate doesn't want a beer tonight, that's okay, no pressure. Combine that with the sober in the country message and what Shan's doing, and seeing how other people are doing it in the bush and trying to promote that message and help others in the bush do the same. And cutting it out has helped me a lot. You know, I'm a lot clearer in the morning. I can perform better at work and longer days, longer hours. I think the work that Sober in the Country is doing is really important. It's really powerful for people in the bush, and it's a conversation that needs to happen. We're here to support people in the bush and promote a healthy relationship with grog.
I wanted to get behind the message and share the work that Sober in the Country is doing, not because I care about whether someone chooses to drink or to not drink. It's not something I take personally. And I do want to use my story and my experience to hopefully make it easier for other people to make a change or to have a difference in some way. You know, for anyone looking to cut back, I'd say that if you commit to it, you'll find that there is that support there, and that even though your friends might want to have a joke at the start, that they'll always come around and be supportive. We're fast becoming a very professional industry, and a big part of that is having, you know, a lot of professional and a lot of amazing people up here. And it's painfully obvious now is that you actually don't have to drink to have a good time. And when I could look back and think about the times that I'd had with friends and with mates and with work colleagues where we'd had an absolute blast, it wasn't because of the beers at all.